Hey guys and girls, bored now, back with Rachel Macdonald, season's greetings from us. So this is going to be our special monthly list, and because it is the festive season, we're doing a Christmas special. So this will be top 10 Christmas themed TV episodes. And we've both come up with our top 10s as normal. We'll alternate. Rachel will do her number 10, I'll do mine, and we'll go from there. A separate video where we won't do lists, but we will talk a bit about some of our favourite Christmas movies and movies that we tend to watch around the holiday seasons, things like that, just favourites we've grown up on. We encourage you, as always, to come up with your own in the comments below. Let us know some of your favourite Christmas TV episodes. We look for in a Christmas episode of TV. Do you go more for the lighter stuff or the comedic stuff, or do you enjoy sort of dramatic episodes that happen to be Christmas?
Looking at my list, I think I like a good mix. I think I just like a good Christmas themed episode. I do think that sitcoms have a little bit of an advantage over dramatic ones because they can pull out like more whimsical things and they can go a little bit further. They can maybe make things a little bit more, heightened reality. But I do like a good dramatic Christmas movie, a Christmas episode. I think when it comes to Christmas episodes, I kind of look for the same things that I look at in Christmas movies, which is I just want an episode that takes the theme of Christmas and uses it well within the episode. So it's not just an episode that's set near Christmas, because there are a few of those, especially sometimes with sitcoms. There'll just be an episode that's like, oh look, it's around Christmas time, but this episode isn't actually Christmas themed. So I like an episode that takes the Christmas theme and kind of runs with it, either does something like a miracle might happen in the episode, or it might be a tribute to a Christmas movie or something like that. So
similar, I prefer it if there is like more references to the holidays in the episode, or it's important to the plot, rather than it just happens to be a backdrop. It just happens to be set around there. I've definitely got a mix, because I've definitely got a few like comedy episodes in my list. But also I've definitely got a good amount of dramas as well. And I'd say my list is probably quite representative of some of my favourite shows in general, which doesn't always work out on these lists.
That's
sometimes
true.
This should be a fun one. Should give you guys some good ideas for Christmas TV.
Just before we start, I just want to ask you, do you think we're going to have any crossovers? Are there any episodes on your list that you think might turn up on my list?
It's a tough one.
It is, isn't it?
Maybe one. I think there could be one, but it could easily not show up on your list as well. But it wouldn't surprise me.
I've got two. There are two on my list that I think may turn up on your list. So we'll see, but I think it will be very interesting.
So
the list with a sitcom episode with a very original title. This is just called Christmas. This is the season 6 episode of that 70s show, their Christmas special. So I love that 70s show. It's one of my favorite sitcoms, if not my favorite sitcom. And they do a few different Christmas episodes, but I've gone with the season 6 one because it's a really fun episode and it really has a lot of fun with the concept of Christmas. So by this point in time in the narrative, the majority of the gang have graduated high school, but Jackie, who is a year younger than them, is still in high school, and she's trying to bribe Stephen to take her to the Christmas dance. So because she's just recently been kicked off the cheerleading team, so if she turns up with a hot older boyfriend, she might be cool enough to get back on the team. Now the gang are all resisting going to the Christmas high school dance, obviously because they're not in high school anymore. But then they find out that Kitty has signed them all up to be elves because Red is going to be playing Santa Claus this year, which is, if you've ever seen that 70s show, it's just a terrible idea to have Red Foreman play Santa Claus. He would scare the hell out of children, and he does in this episode. There's a great running gag of the kids asking him for like dolls or ponies, and he's like, nope, you're getting a crescent wrench. Nope, you're getting a pocket watch. And then at one point in time, he's sitting with some kid on his lap, and he's like, and that's what really happened in Vietnam. And Kitty's just like, oh, bad Santa. So all of the boys end up going to the Christmas dance, and they discover that because they're now no longer high school boys, they're now college guys, that all the girls and all of the guys think that they are just the coolest thing ever. So there's a lot of fun with the boys kind of, feeding off this newfound popularity that they have. There's a great slow motion walk where they walk into the dance to TNT and walk in slow motion, and then Fez walks into the Christmas tree and knocks it over because of course he does. And it's just a really fun, like it's a sitcom episode, so there's nothing particularly over the top about it. It doesn't really use the episode to move the story along that much, but it's a really cute kind of quaint little Christmas episode where you get to see the guys have a bit of fun with their newfound popularity. Red as Santa is just the funniest thing ever. Like I said, if you guys know Red Foreman, I mean, he's played by Kurtwood Smith, who is, really good at doing the grumpy, growly kind of characters. So you imagine that sort of character, playing Santa Claus, and it's just, it's terrifying.
Yeah, I can picture that.
Yeah, so it's really good. And then there's this really funny thing where his neighbor Bob is like really jealous because he usually plays Santa. So at one point he comes in dressed as Santa and like pushes Red off the Santa throne. And it's all like, nah, you've had your turn. I'm Santa Claus now. And then the whole episode ends with this really pretty montage of like all the different couples to like set to Oh Holy Night. And there's this really funny gag at the end because one of the characters, Donna, she works at a radio at the local radio station, and the song starts skipping, and she and Eric are lying on the car, and she's like, "Oh crap, I'm still on the air," and she runs off to go to stop the song from skipping. So, like I said, this episode, some of the other episodes that I've got on my list, they're more kind of over the top episodes. They're bigger episodes. They maybe move the plot forward a little bit more. But I thought I'd tick this one off because, like I said, I love that 70s show. I love when they do a Christmas themed or a holiday themed episode because they use the holiday really well. And this one's just a little bit of fun to kind of kick off the Christmas season. So that is my number 10, the very originally titled Christmas from season 6 of that 70s show.
Okay, good start. Yeah, you've sold that episode well. I know you are a big fan of the show. And also an episode of that appeared on your Halloween list, which is interesting. It did. So there is a link, and not to spoil too much, but I think there could be a crossover between my lists, like the Halloween and Christmas one later on. And you probably already knew this, but they're bringing that sitcom back, except updating it for the 90s.
I am so excited.
The new year, I think, isn't it?
Yes, it's coming out January. It's really not far away. The trailer dropped recently, and it looks so good.
Number 10, I've gone for an episode of Veronica Mars from season 1. I think you know the one I'm going to say.
Yes.
It's the Eccles family Christmas.
Very
season
nice.
1, Veronica Mars. And this is definitely very festive, the episode with all the imagery. But because Veronica Mars is a very like dark, brooding sort of noir style show, it actually does something a bit more sinister with Christmas. They use like the atmosphere of Christmas.
Yes.
And there's definitely scenes where it's sort of quite festive and bright, but then other scenes during the night and stuff where they do make it a bit more darker and things, which I like. I like when shows and films do that. But this is a good example of what really makes Veronica Mars, when it's at its best, such a good show, because it's one of these classic little mysteries that work around the main arc, the main mystery of the season so well, because it starts off with this really casual, like drunken poker game, which like Weevil and Logan, Duncan, and a couple of others are having at Logan's house, and Weevil wins some money, but out of the blue, the money is owed, disappears, and he obviously starts threatening people, and things get stirred up. So the mystery becomes who stole the money. They're assuming it's someone at the party, and they get Veronica on the case, as they do, and that becomes the sort of mystery of the episode. You also get some good stuff with Logan's dad as well. He's hosting a Christmas party, and we find out that he's been getting death threats. So Keith starts digging into his past, his history to do with all these young girls he's been sleeping with, and the potential suspects who might have done it. So there's some good stuff with that.
Mm.
And that's another thing I like about the episode, is the way it does dig further into the Logan family, the Eccles family, and just some of the dark secrets like lurking in this, what seems to be a more pristine, picturesque type, perfect American family.
Yeah.
So that's where the dark stuff and the Christmas stuff work so well, because they're trying to put on this front of like a happy family during the holidays, and in reality it's anything but the good, intriguing mystery. Two mysteries in a way at the core of the episode, and also you've got some quite meaty character stuff during the episode, and stuff that also adds to like the wider mystery of the season as well, which is some of the best episodes of this sort of show, is when they do that, when they get that balance. A Logan family Christmas from Veronica Mars.
That is a great episode. I think it's actually one of the better episodes of season 1. And like you said, I really like how they use the Christmas theme to kind of even make the episode a bit darker, you know, because it's like it's all sparkly and happy and bright, but there's all this stuff going on behind the scenes that's like, you know, it's a pretty facade that hides the darkness, and Christmas works really well. There's also some really good Logan and Veronica interaction in that episode. Some fun scenes between them. So yeah, no, I do. That's a great episode to have on the list. Definitely on board with that. All right, so coming in at number 9 is the show that I also had on my Halloween list. I also had an episode on there. I've gone for A Very Supernatural Christmas from Supernatural, which is the season 3 episode, which centers around Christmas. Supernatural does these kinds of episodes really well. This is actually kind of where the show's strength lies, is when it's doing, you know, these kind of heightened episodes. So in this one, we have 2 concurrent storylines. So we have one in the present, where obviously Sam and Dean are investigating a usual, you know, monster of the week kind of storyline, but it is centered around Christmas. People, I believe, are being eaten and are disappearing. And then we also simultaneously have kind of a sad, kind of bittersweet storyline running, where we see Sam and Dean when they're younger, and we see that their father has left them alone again, because John Winchester is the freaking father of the year. And Dean is trying to make, you know, Christmas special for Sam. And there is a significant moment that happens towards the end. Now, what's really fun with this is, similarly to the Halloween one, this kind of plays into the mythos of, you know, Saint Nick and Krampus and stuff like that, because they end up coming across like an evil Mr. and Mrs. Claus. And they're the ones who are doing the killing and the maiming. And it turns out that they are pagan gods that are linked to Yuletide. And, you know, it goes into a little bit of mythology. Again, this would be like a real urban legend or a real sort of mythology, because Supernatural is very good at doing that. And the people who are playing Mr. and Mrs. Claus are just so fun, because they're playing them like they are just, you know, the nice kind of Mr. and Mrs. Claus. They're smiling and they're all dressed in their green and their red, and they're telling Dean off for using bad language, while they've got Sam and Dean tied to chairs and they're about to kill them. So, you know, they kind of use the Christmas theme to show the hilarity and the insanity of their lives. But I think the B storyline, where you see little Dean trying to make Christmas special for little Sam, I think Dean looks like he's about 12 in this episode, so Sam's probably about 8 or 9, and he steals presents from a house to give to Sam. It's heartbreaking and also kind of funny, because what he ends up stealing is like a Malibu Barbie and, you know, a makeup set or something.
Okay.
But yeah, and so, you know, obviously that's when Sam really kind of clues in, is like, Dad forgot about us, didn't he? And it kind of shows the heartbreak of the Winchesters and more on their background and how they grew up and why Dean is so protective over Sam. But we see Sam give Dean a necklace that Dean has been wearing since the pilot episode. It's a little charm, a little turtle, I believe. And Sam originally got it to give to John. And when John obviously left them, he gave it to Dean instead. And that particular necklace actually becomes a very important important plot point later on in the series. It becomes it becomes involved in the angel and demon and God storyline. So seeing it being given to Dean in this episode, in retrospect, is actually quite significant and quite beautiful. And the episode ends with Sam and Dean in the present time making like a crappy little Christmas tree in their house, which is decorated with like air fresheners from the petrol station because they don't have any other decorations, and they've made like really bad eggnog, and they have a little moment. There's also another really kind of almost sad, it's funny but also sad part where Sam and Dean burst into someone's house thinking that this person's the bad guy. He's not, and then they are like, oh, we're carolers, and they start singing Silent Night, but they don't know the words, and so it shows not only like, 'cause it's so funny, so they're just like round and round the Christmas Silent Night, they're just, but so it's funny, but it's also kind of sad that it shows that these guys, their lives have been so different from a norm that they don't even know Christmas carols. That's how far outside of reality they have to operate. So it's just a great fun episode. Like I said, Supernatural really shines when it does these kinds of episodes, especially in the early seasons. So again, tying to my Halloween list, this is my number 9, A Very Supernatural Christmas from Supernatural.
That does sound fantastic. The carols thing particularly.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's one I haven't seen because, as I've said to you before, I've only not that long ago started watching Supernatural, and I've only seen a few episodes. I've seen like 3, maybe 4 from season 1. Yeah. And then because people recommended that Halloween episode, I sort of jumped and watched that. But yeah, I need to go back and watch more. But that does sound like a strong episode. 9, actually not a million miles away from that in the sort of show it is. In fact, a very similar type of show to Supernatural. My number 9 comes from The X-Files. And
that's nice.
Yeah, and this is all the way in season 6, so quite a late episode from the original show. So the episode has a brilliant title. It's called How the Ghost Stole Christmas, referencing the Bridge title.
Nice.
Which is very nice, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this one, poor old Scully gets dragged out on Christmas Eve for an X-File from Mulder. She gets a case involving what he believes is a haunted house. Mm-hmm. And it dates back all the way to 1917, where, according to the X-File, according to the information Mulder has, it was a love pact between this couple in the house, and they supposedly, as part of the pact, they died, they killed each other, and but something like that. I can't remember the exact details, but it's that sort of thing. But they're still in the house, apparently, the ghosts. So the house is according to what Mulder thinks. So Mulder and Scully have to go into the house, investigate. And it becomes one of those bottle-style episodes where it's all set in the house. It's doing the whole, like, very sort of spooky, creepy sort of house, them searching around. And they, obviously, at some point, they come across the ghosts. And they do a really clever sort of character thing in this episode where you actually have Mulder and Scully talking to the ghosts at different points. So they talk to them separately. So you almost have like the female ghost talking to Scully, the male ghost talking to Mulder. So it's almost like a mirror type thing of Mulder and Scully. Yeah, potentially having a relationship, and because this is still before they've become like a romantic item, but there's obviously always been this sexual tension there, and so it's almost like comparing their situation, the horror style moments as well, but it is largely focused really on the character stuff and the way they interact with these ghosts, which really makes the episode. So it's quite a fun one, and I should obviously mention who the ghosts are, the guest stars, because they cast it really well, where you've got Lily Tomlin as one ghost.
Oh, okay.
So, comedy legend, Lily Tomlin. And you've also got Edward Asner, who you've probably heard of, but
the name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's most famous for the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Okay.
So you probably know who I mean.
Yeah.
And this is funny because there's an episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show which almost made my list. So,
Oh, okay.
and it would have been the one I was going to have at number 10. So you almost had this accidental link. Casting, the ghosts are brilliant and they really bring something to the episode, some personality. So as I said, it is quite a spooky one. And I like that it's set on Christmas Eve. I like the idea of Mulder dragging Scully out on Christmas Eve, where she's really wants to be doing traditional Christmas stuff. And that's how
Scully.
Yeah, they spend their Christmas Eve, and that's how they sort of go into Christmas Day. Season 6, it's still reasonably enjoyable and consistent, and this is probably one of the standout episodes from that season. So that's How the Ghost Stole Christmas, my number 9.
Very nice. No, it's a great title. The X-Files, as I've spoken about, is a show that I haven't watched in its entirety, but I have seen enough to know the Mulder and Scully dynamic and to know that it's very enjoyable. So whenever the show plays on that, that's always fun. So that'll have to be one I look out for when I do eventually get around to watching it. But that's very cool. Yeah. All right, so for my number 8, I'm going to teen drama for this. I'm turning to an early 2000s teen drama, and I'm going with the OC, the season 1 episode, The Best Christmaker Ever. So the OC is known for Christmaker. So Seth, the main character Ryan, when he comes to live with the Coens, Seth's parents, Sandy is Jewish, Kirsten is a wasp. So they combine Christmas and Hanukkah, and you get Christmaker. So you get 8 days of presents followed by Christmas Day. Now, this episode is the first time we ever hear about Christmaker. Seth has a great time the whole episode. Adam Brody's obviously having so much fun because Seth is really into the holidays and like no one else is getting into the holiday spirit. And so it's basically a lot of the episode is him just running around trying to get everyone into the Christmaker spirit and explaining the origins of Christmaker. It also moves the story forward a little bit. Where we are in the story at this point in time, Marissa, Ryan's girlfriend, is having some issues and she ends up getting drunk at Christmas, and this is kind of the turning point for her character to kind of start getting herself a little bit more together. It doesn't quite work, but at least we have a bit of a turning point here. And then we also have a fun little love triangle playing out between Seth and Anna and Summer, who are the two girls who are interested in him at the moment. And both Anna and Summer are trying to outdo each other. And so they both do their own Christmas gifts for Seth, and their gifts are hilarious and so perfect for each of them. So Seth is a massive comic book nerd. So Anna actually makes him his own comic, draws him his own comic book where he's the hero and his pet horse is like his sidekick. Summer, however, manages to completely blow Anna out of the water because she dresses up as Wonder Woman for Seth and basically strips off in front of him and has her magical lasso. And well, both the girls end up seeing each other's presence and kind of feeling a bit crappy and starting to realize that, you know, this isn't a game anymore. One of them's going to get hurt. And they end up telling Seth, you need to choose between the two of us. So we've got a lot going on in this episode. Kirsten finds out that her father, who runs this big real estate group, has got all these shady goings-ons. And basically she tells her husband and they kind of expose that. And so there's a big mix of like drama, but also some lighthearted Christmas stuff. I think this really gets a good mix of showing how the holidays are not always a great time for everyone. You know, like I love Christmas. I'm one of those people who's always loved Christmas, but I understand that, you know, if you have family issues or you have broken families or you're just, you know, or you don't celebrate, Christmas can be a horrible time. You know, there's carols everywhere, there's decorations everywhere, everyone's happy, and sometimes you just want to go bah humbug. So I think this episode really shows the push and pull between the different characters who love Christmas and the ones that are trying to avoid Christmas. So, you know, I think there's always a good episode to be had when you bring out everyone's issues around Christmas, because it is unfortunately that kind of time of year. You know, you get family together, there's always parties where people are getting drunk, so people are always, you know, spilling their secrets and, you know, saying things that they maybe shouldn't. So I think this episode really, you know, zeroes in on that. And the fact that Christmaker became such a staple of the OC, like we didn't know it was going to become so big back in season 1, but every single season of the OC has a Christmaker episode, and every Christmaker episode is a big episode and is, you know, marks the point where certain things will happen, or there'll be a certain turnaround with certain characters. Like in season 2, it's all about how Summer saved Chris McCarr, and in season 4, they do kind of like It's a Wonderful Life, alternate reality. So this was kind of the beginning of it all. It's a lot of fun. This was back when the show was still fresh and fun and was still kind of finding its feet a little bit. So that's my number 8, the best Chris McCarr ever from the OC.
Number 8, it's my first comedy pick of the list, and it's from one of my favourite sitcoms ever, I would say, and that's a Christmas episode of 30 Rock.
Oh, okay.
So there's a couple to choose from, or maybe a few actually, but a couple which sort of stood out. But the one I've gone with is called Luda Christmas. So this is from season 2, and the main thing with this episode is that Liz's parents come to visit for the holidays, and this just sums up like some of the humour in 30 Rock, because Liz's brother, it turns out, has this particular like condition, disease, where he still thinks it's the 1980s.
Oh,
so
dear.
yeah, so he basically, even though he's like whatever, he's meant to be a 30-something-year-old man, he still believes he's a teenager. So, and the parents don't want to tell him the truth, so they've kept up the pretense. So he frustrates Liz because she has to be the adult and stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the funny scenes in the episode is when he mentions Goonies, and he thinks he only went to see Goonies like last week, and Liz finds out all these years later that the parents took him to see Goonies rather than going to see her softball game.
Oh,
and they just like made up an excuse. And that's one of the fun beats of the plot, where that just comes out and it leads to this fight. But really good stuff. And like the actor who they get to play her brother is quite famous for like comedies. He's known for being on like Conan O'Brien and some comedies. So sort of good casting. You get some really great guest stars on 30 Rock. You've had people like Steve Martin on there, Jennifer Aniston, John Hamm's been on it.
So, yes, I've seen John Hamm's parts in it. It's hilarious.
Very good. Yeah, you get some great guest stars on 30 Rock. But at the same time as that storyline's going on, you've got a storyline with Jack and his mother. So Jack's the Alec Baldwin character, and any time you have conflict with him and his mother Colleen, it always leads to entertaining stuff. But she's visiting for the holidays and she's winding him up as she normally does. But the funny payoff at the end of the episode is that, because during the episode they've been dragged to dinner with Liz's family, and Jack is just like dreading it. And I think at first his mother is being her normal sort of like icy self, like she's like being really mean and mocking the Lemon family. And Jack is actually trying to tell her, no, be nice, don't do this. But then at the end of the episode, where things just snap in the Lemon family, and when like Mitch has found out that he's not really a teen anymore, he's an adult, and they all start fighting. You've got Jack and his mother finally bonding, enjoying the fact that the Lemons are fighting at the dinner table. So it's really good stuff. And then you get stuff surrounding like a party at work type thing with like the other writers in the staff room, which they call like Luda Party, Luda Christmas, which is where the title comes from. So you get some good antics surrounding the party. You've also got Tracy Jordan, the sort of madcap Eddie Murphy style actor in the show, who he can't do anything too extreme because he's got an ankle bracement to do with a drink driving thing. So he has to try and find a fun way around that so that he can actually drink at the party. Rock is that they put a lot of effort into like things like their music and some of the visuals, because it is quite a surreal show in places. They do play around with things like that. So even though it's obviously a really funny episode with some like cynical like characters and stuff, you still have quite a magical feel to it at times. They do put a lot of effort into that, because there's another Christmas episode, I think, from the next season, which is the one where Jack accidentally runs his mother over, and she's like, she has to be in a wheelchair, and she's convinced that he did it on purpose. And that stuff is hilarious, where she's coming out with all this evidence that he did it. It's like Exhibit A, Exhibit B, and then but yeah, that sort of ends in quite a magical sort of dreamlike way, where they actually perform a Christmas song together on the piano, and they do it like this sort of spectacular Broadway style number. So that's something that adds something else to the show, apart from just how funny the characters are and stuff. So yeah, I've gone for a Luda Christmas from 30 Rock. Good stuff.
I haven't. 30 Rock is one that I haven't watched. I keep meaning getting around it because I actually love Alec Baldwin, so I really do need to check it out at some point. But I've seen bits and pieces here and there, and from what I've seen, it does look like a really fun show. Like, I've seen a lot of the John Hamm scenes because I wanted to watch those, and they were hilarious.
They're very
so that's it. And sitcoms are always sitcoms are usually quite good at doing Christmas things, and when you've got a show like you said, like 30 Rock, which has a slightly heightened reality, you can have a lot of fun with holiday themed episodes. So very cool. A more dramatic turn with a very short-lived TV show from the early 2000s. I have gone with the season 2 episode from True Calling, which actually, unfortunately, ended up being the series finale, and it's called "'Twas the Night Before Christmas Again." So anyone who knows the basis of True Calling, this was Eliza Dushku's short-lived vehicle after Buffy. It's such a pity that it was cancelled, because it was actually a really fun show. She plays True, the main character, who works in a morgue and has the ability to corpses that have died unnatural deaths, suicides, murders, accidents, will ask her for help. Her day then rewinds, and she has the full day to save the person. Now, as the show went on, and I'm going to have to give some spoilers away to talk about this episode, unfortunately, but as the show goes on, we do meet another character called Jack, who is played by Jason Priestley. He is a really fun character, but it turns out that he is True's opposite. So while True is there to keep to save these people, Jack is there to make sure that they actually die. And so every time a day restarts for True, it also restarts for Jack, and he is the opposing source, trying to stop her. So in "'Twas the Night Before Christmas Again," True actually gets asked for help from a cadaver because she's at med school, and obviously the cadaver doesn't come back to life. She doesn't rewind to 6 months before. She only rewinds for the day. So she actually has to go and ask Jack for his help, because he gets flashes of the person that she doesn't get. That's his little advantage. So in this episode, they actually have to work. It turns out they're working to find out exactly how the cadaver died. And it turns out that it was a murder. So they end up having to work together to solve it. But it's actually a really fun episode, because at first you've got the Christmas theme. So that's right. She comes into the morgue in the morning, and there's Santa Claus lying on the slab, and she's like, "Oh no, who killed Santa?" So it's like a fun visual gag. And that's right. And Davis, who's played by Zach Galifianakis, he ends up playing Santa Claus and going to the Christmas Center. Also, he's trying to impress this girl. There's a whole big mess of things that's going on here. So True and Jack end up working together and solving the mystery. And it's actually a really fun episode to watch them work together, because they actually have good chemistry. There's a little bit of banter back and forth. Jack trying to talk to True about he's not actually the bad guy. It's all about, the balance of life. And of course, at the end of the episode, True ends up inviting him over for Christmas dinner. And she says no one should be alone at Christmas. There's also a few other threads that are moved forward to do with True's dad and her brother, who recently found out a secret, but then the day restarted, so he forgot the secret. And there's all these conspiracies going on. And it's such a shame that this was the final episode, because it actually starts to build towards a lot of things that start to culminate in the series, and a lot of lore that was starting to be built and would have gone into these really great places. But unfortunately, they canned the series, and they didn't let the cast know. Apparently, they finished filming this, and then they were told, "Oh, by the way, this is your final episode." And it was all just kind of like, wow, it happened really quickly.
Terrible.
And It was truly terrible, and I've read what where they were planning to take the series. There was one of the writer that did a few live journal posts that put up some script samples and talked about where they were going, and the show was headed in such a great direction, and it's just such a pity that it got cut short. But this episode is just really fun. Like I said, they really worked the Christmas theme. They kind of use it to show again the conspiracies that are going on and the messed up family dynamics, because True has a really messed up family, and and then we have a great scene at the end where we get all the holiday cheer and, everyone's happy, but then there's like little sinister goings-ons here and there, like people talking in the corners, and you're like, ooh, something's going on. So I think they really, again, it's one of those ones kind of like similar to the Veronica Mars one that you mentioned, where they use the bright and the joy of Christmas to kind of offset the creepy going-ons and, the darkness. And I really like when you use that kind of juxtaposition. So it's a pity that it was the final episode. It's a pity it didn't go further, this show, because I really enjoyed True Calling. It was a really fun show. I think it was something interesting and new. And I think by season 2, they'd started to do a lot of stuff that was shaking up the mythology and like turning things on their heads. And this episode was one of them. And then it just all came to an end. And it was just really sad. But I do love watching this episode. I do love rewatching True Calling, and it's just a lot of fun. So that's my number 7. 'Twas the Night Before Christmas again.
Yeah, very good. This is one I have seen because I've obviously watched True Calling, and I share your frustration. That's fine.
I know.
Because it is a good final episode, but then just finding out that they actually leave it on that sort of a cliffhanger is so frustrating. It's such a gut punch. It does remind me a bit of like when I was talking in another list about the My So-Called Life thing, and the way that series ends, the way that series was cancelled prematurely. So it's a similar thing, because at least in something like Firefly, they did actually get to tie it up properly. Yes. And the final episode of that doesn't feel like such a big cliffhanger.
No.
Thing. And then they got the film as well. So,
yeah,
at least they got that. But yeah. So I'm just saying, if anybody wants to throw enough money at me, I'll bring True Calling back, and I'll give it a proper.
I'll do it too. Yeah, come on,
finish.
give us the money.
Yeah,
we'll do it.
Show me the money. Yeah. But it's probably one we should do some days, since it's quite short anyway, and there will be some fun discussions. But I knew from the minute that slimy Git Jack showed up, then he couldn't be trusted. I just had a feeling, just something about him. 7, and I'm sticking on the comedy theme for this one. And this is actually a sort of a crossover from the Halloween list too, because you'll remember I had an episode of Community on that list.
I had a feeling you'd have a Community episode,
Yeah, which makes sense, because as a show, it does like the sort of themed episodes so well. So, I've gone for a Christmas episode of Community, which I only sort of rewatched today, actually. But the episode is called Arbed's Uncontrollable Christmas from season 2. And once again, this just shows you what a fun, high concept show Community is, because the whole episode is done in clay animation from the very start. Yeah, great idea. And the whole thing is like Arbed's obviously the central character in the episode, and he has to try and figure out why everything is the way it is, like they're in clay animation, and he has to try and get to the bottom of his childhood and what Christmas means to him to undo the spell, which has left them all animated. So you get animated versions of all the characters, which is really fun. They've got really creative with the way they all look in clay animation, and they've done it very well. You can see there's a lot of like thought and craft that's gone into the episode. So they go off into like this magic sort of fantasy world, which is called Planet Arbed. And at the same time, you've got like the professor who's like into psychology, who sort of thinks that he's got the answers, and at various times he's trying to get Arbed to go to this particular place which he thinks might hold the answer, but Arbed is like telling him that no, that this isn't the way. But you get like a fun like chase style sequence between them at one point, which is all on the train. So once again, it has that feel of like almost like one of those action style things. Abed is the perfect character for them to do this through, because he's just the one who is like the major film TV nerd, the one who lives his life as if it's an episode of TV or something. So he just has like the childlike enthusiasm to do this sort of a story through, and then the other characters have to follow. He just has like the childlike enthusiasm to do this sort of a story through, and then the other characters have to follow him along. And there's just so many fun things, because it's almost like there's different parts of this world, and they're going through like sort of like across like an ice style path, and it sort of looks a bit like the North Pole style thing. But then there's different stuff, as I said, like the train, but then he turns them into like different characters, like different versions of the, so you've got like Christmas themed names or something, so like Soldier Troy, for example, which soldier toy sort of thing for Troy. You've got Ballerina Annie, for example. So just different like versions of themselves. You've got like a Christmas baby version of Shelley, and she's like the super religious one. So she's
okay.
Shouldn't I be like an angel type thing? You know? And Britta is turned into a robot, but they're all like puns on their name sort of thing, but like a Christmas style thing. Jeff is like a Jack in the Box type thing, so it's good. He has to like hop around, you know, as a Jack in the Box. But what I really like about the episode is it's probably the only episode of Community that you could actually show to a kid and they would enjoy it.
Oh, okay,
Because
nice.
the thing is, obviously they wouldn't get a lot of like the smart humor or like the references, but that's what a good like animation family film sort of does, is then it's layered in a way where you have jokes for the adults but also more visual gags for like the children. So this is what it is, like you could actually put this episode on for a kid and I think they would quite enjoy the visuals, even though they might not understand some shows where it's just packed with so many jokes within a scene. So like you just have at one point they're going through a certain part of the thing, and you've just got like these plants singing like Christmas songs, and there's just a gag about, you know, is that going to be copyright? And Abed's like, no, they're all public domain. We don't have to worry.
Nice.
And there's just like fun, different gags as you go through and stuff. And finally, they obviously get to the bottom of it. But it's a very, very fun, very entertaining episode. And as I said, it works on both levels, where it still feels like a classic Community style episode, but it's also very sweet and funny and charming and visually very sort of pleasing. Like the animation is done very well. So I like that side of it. It's definitely a standout for the holiday season, I think.
Yeah.
So maybe the sort of thing that even if you never watched another episode of Community, you could probably just stick that one on.
Yeah.
And I think you would probably quite enjoy it. So that's Community, Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas.
Very nice. Well, I haven't watched Community. Like I said, I have a bit of an issue with Chevy Chase, but that does sound like a fun episode. And I know enough about the series to know that, like, if they tackled something like that, they do it very well. So given that you've said that you don't need to watch the rest of the series, maybe I'll just check that out for the Christmas season and see how it is. So that's very cool. So at my number 6, we have our first crossover episode. Now, this was one of the two that I thought would be on your list, and it has been. So at number 6, I have An Eccles Family Christmas from Veronica Mars. I actually really love this episode. Like I said when you were talking about it, I actually think it's one of the best episodes of season 1. I love the poker game. I love Veronica figuring out who stole the money. I mean, anytime you watch Veronica be able to come in and do a big speech and you know, talk about how she's figured everything out, it's always fantastic. I particularly like when she figures out that Duncan, who has been acting drunk the whole night, is actually not drinking Jack Daniels, and the way she displays that is she comes in and she grabs his bottle and she just starts swigging it, and they're all like, "Damn, girl!" It's like, yeah, he's drinking iced tea. He's pretending to be drunk so he can take you guys for a ride. So I think that's really fun. Like I said, I think that she's got some great scenes with Logan. I think she's also got some really fun scenes with Keith, like right at the beginning when they're decorating the tree and she's talking about how you have to keep all the Christmas decorations that, you know, you made as kids. And she picks up like a Rudolph thing and she's like, this disturbs me. And then I love the end of the episode where Aaron actually does get stabbed at the Christmas party with like a pumpkin carver or an ice pick or something. And it's like, it's brilliant because I think they've got like they've got a Christmas music playing in the background and there's all this, like everything's going on and like there's all this like craziness and it's all just set to the background of Christmas and these carolers out the front. And it's just, it's just that offset of, the joy and the fun and the lightness of Christmas with, someone's getting stabbed out the back here. So I think you covered a lot of it in your, when you talked about it, you know, just a great episode. You got the two simultaneous mysteries. It's always fun when you see Keith working a case and Veronica working a case and the cases kind of, you know, overlap. So I thought that was fun. And just a really good episode, a really fun episode. And I love at the end when Veronica joins the poker game and she just spreads the cards out and flips them back and is all like, all right, who wants to go? Like, it's always fun whenever she takes on someone and she wins because she's such a great character. So just a really fun episode, really uses that juxtaposition of Christmas set against horrible things. Like you said, it definitely dives more into the Eccles family, which of course becomes very important as we can continue season 1 and get to know more about their secrets and everything. So I do like that we've got that crossover. I had a feeling that we would when I put this on my list. I was like, I bet Keith has this. He loves Veronica Mars, and this is a really good episode. So number 6, our first crossover, an Eccles family Christmas from Veronica Mars.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, we're both big fans.
Yeah.
I wondered that actually. It's not the one I was thinking of, but so actually now I think we might have 2 crossovers. I'm probably going to agree with your prediction, but yeah, good point about the end with the stabbing because it's almost like their Black Christmas style moment.
Yes, it is.
Like that.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, wouldn't surprise me if there's some influence, but number 6. Oh yeah, I only just noticed. That's funny because there's a 6 in the title, but okay. I'm so easy to please. Right, my number 6. It comes from 6 Feet Under.
I had a feeling when you said it.
So we'll be doing soon, so I won't spoil too much. But so it's an episode from season 2, and it's called "It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year."
Nice.
So the setup of the episode is that it's 1 year on from the death of the father, from Nathaniel Sr. And what we get flashbacks with all the major characters of their last encounter with him, the last time they saw him. And because it's a year ago and it was Christmas time as well, a lot of them involves like Christmas and stuff like that. So that's like the main, the main sort of plot of the episode. But you, as in every episode, you get a funeral as well, and the funeral is a biker funeral. And and this is something the show does really well because when you have like a specialized sort of themed like funeral like this, it does add a lot more flavor to the episode and some of like these funerals. And it's always fun to see the way the various family members interact and how this sort of stuff affects them. But so the episode opens with a surreal image where you've got this biker dressed up as Santa Claus. It's like he does it one day of the year. He goes out and entertains kids as Santa. Yeah. He's on his bike and he passes some kids. He says, "Hey, kids," they say, "Hey." And it's that sort of 6 Feet Under moment where he gets distracted for a brief moment. He crashes, and oh no, the kids have to watch Santa Claus.
Santa die! Oh no!
That's really dark. Okay.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
traumatizing for any kid, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. So that becomes the funeral. So it becomes a biker funeral because his mates and family like stump up the money, I should say. And at one point, one of them says, we're paying for a big ass biker funeral, and that's what we're going to have. And I sort of like little details about how at one point, like the Fishers are like having their own like Christmas dinner upstairs, and so it's either Nate or David, I think, says to like one of the guys, he says, we've given you time, but now we need to have our dinner after like Christmas, and they just say, well, we're going to keep this thing going, but it's fine. We can keep guard. We can look after stuff. You go and have your family Christmas. We're going to keep going, and it's just like this raucous sort of biker type thing where they keep drinking and like just playing rock and roll songs, and they're sort of honouring. But as I said, it adds flavour to the episode, and the big thing is with Nate in the episode, have you, and so he starts talking to the widow about it, and like he really gets into this idea of why can't I go back and do that? Almost like, having this sort of midlife. He's a bit young for midlife, but that sort of idea. Then it's like, hey, I quite fancy doing this. I never got to do it when I was younger, so and it sort of ends with like she leaves the keys to like a motorcycle for him, so he ends up then, and it's really nice. But that's what I mean, like the way these particular themed funerals actually impact on the characters and the character stuff you get from that. And there's other little tidbits, but it's a good festive episode, I think, because of how emotional it is for the various characters. And it's been 1 year since they lost the funeral, and it just happened to be on Christmas time as well. So it once again, it makes things a bit more emotional when something like that happens on a Christmas holiday, and it just makes it a bit more painful because it should obviously be the time of year for a family like get together, some fun. So I do like the way it cuts around the different characters and we see their memories of the last time they saw him. So and really good episode, and I'll say season 2 is when the show really starts going to like the next level, because season 1's good. Season 1 for a first season is like very good and solid, but from season 2 onwards, it really becomes like the masterpiece of a show, which it would be. So we've got some good times ahead talking about 6 Feet Under.
Yeah.
But I've obviously whetted your appetite a little bit with some of that.
No, it sounds like a great setup for an episode. Very good. And yes, when we do get around to reviewing it, it'll be interesting to see. And something to look forward to. Yeah. Very cool. Cool. So we're moving into top 5 now. So I'm circling back to the sitcoms with my number 5 pick, which is from a sitcom I've been trying to get you to watch for ages, but you are stubbornly refusing. So this is the Scrubs season 1 Christmas episode, My Own Personal Jesus. So Scrubs, as with a lot of other sitcoms, does have several Christmas episodes. This, in my opinion, is the best one. So we have several storylines that are kind of going on. And now Scrubs is one of those sitcoms that it lives in a slightly heightened reality. So the episodes will always have things that will happen that it's like, okay, did this really happen? Or is this just JD, having a huge imagination? Because JD has lots of different imagined spots. So this episode, obviously, it's Christmas time in the hospital. All the doctors are like, Christmas time, what's it going to bring? We're all kind of miserable. But there is one character, Turk, who's played by Donald Faison. He is my my favorite character. I love Turk. And Turk loves Christmas. And a lot of this episode focuses around the fact that Turk loves Christmas. And JD has all these imagined spots of like Turk being like a preacher and like getting everyone in the holiday spirit. And he's there in his antlers and his Rudolph nose. But they also talk about how Turk is very religious. And that is one of the reasons that he loves Christmas, is because it ties into his faith. And you know, that JD and Carla, Turk's girlfriend, are kind of mocking him and making fun of him and stuff, and Turk's trying to like get them to take it seriously. And there's a great little exchange where Carla's like yelling at JD or telling JD off, and he's all like, "Oh really, Nurse Teresa, have you ever read the Bible?" And she's like, "Well, I started it, but then I skipped to the end and it was ruined for me." And I was like, that's great. And then simultaneously, you have Elliot, who is kind of a disaster of a character, having to do her time in the free clinic. And she comes across this young pregnant girl. And Elliot's just been told by the chief of medicine that she will definitely go into obstetrics because she's a woman. So she's kind of like, yeah, I don't want to deal with this. Babies aren't really my thing. I'm going to go and get someone else and come back. But then when she comes back, the girl's disappeared. And it's really bad because she has a very dangerous condition. So we've got some stakes in the episode. So it's left at Christmas Eve that Turk is left to be on call. And they talk about how being on call in the hospital on Christmas Eve is quite possibly the worst thing that can ever happen to you. And they do it in this really darkly funny kind of way where they take the song The 12 Days of Christmas and they rewrite it. So it's on the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me a drunk who drove into a tree. I mean, it goes through the whole song and it's like, you know, 5 beaten wives, 4 dying children, blah, blah, blah. It's like all these horrible things. And you see Turk just going back and forth until it just ends on this really sad note. And Turk's just sitting there looking completely dejected. I mean, this is something that Scrubs does quite well, as it manages to balance the humor with the pathos of the story. So the next day, Christmas Day, he's lost his faith. You know, he talks to Carla and he's like, there were so many people in the hospital last night, so many people that needed help, and I didn't know where God was, because how could he let this happen? And JD's voiceover talks about how, you know, he never really thought of faith being important, but without his faith, Turk looks like he's fading away. And then because it's Scrubs and because we have to have the heightened reality, Turk's up on the roof on Christmas Day and he sees the star of the tree that's in the park nearby. And all of a sudden he knows where the pregnant girl is. So we have this great shot of Turk running, and he's Turk, so he's always running in a really stupid way, and he finds the pregnant girl under the tree in the park, and they manage to get her to safety. And you know, you have that kind of happy end, and so you have again that kind of heightened reality of like, he was able to find her because it was Christmas, he was able to get his faith back because it was Christmas. And of course, because it's Scrubs and it likes to make fun of itself, at the end they're all standing around and JD has this imagined spot of it being, you know, Mary and the baby, and then it cuts back to reality and he does the God bless us everyone, and all his friends just look at him and they're like, you're such an idiot, that was so cheesy, shut up JD. And then it all kind of walks off with this fun like rock version of Deck the Halls playing. But it's just a really fun episode because it's one of those Scrubs episodes that really gets the balance of humor and pathos right, you know. So we've got the really funny stuff with, you know, with JD and Carla teasing Turk about his faith, and Elliot trying to avoid, you know, having to be around babies. And then there's the character of the janitor who is always just hilarious and is stalking JD. But then you've got it balanced with that really sweet storyline of what happens when you are forced to look at the reality of the world, and does that shake your faith? And then you have that beautiful, you know, conclusion where it's Christmas, so we get a miracle happen. So like I said, Scrubs does do other Christmas episodes, but I think this one in season 1 is the best one because it just gets that mix that Scrubs is so good at getting of the humor and the pathos, and it's just a great episode. So that's my number 5, my own personal Jesus from Scrubs.
Episode of the Twilight Zone, the original, the classic Twilight Zone from season 2. It's called The Night of Mink.
Okay.
So Christmas themed title, very much so. So this is the one, just to refresh your memory, with the drunken department store Santa. So
yes, I remember Kim. I don't think I remember the rest of the episode, but yes, remember drunken department store Santa. Yes.
So he gets fired from his job because customers start complaining about him showing up drunken and how unreliable he is. So he loses his job. But it's one of those Twilight episodes, and you get quite a few of these over the course of the show, where it dips into like the one wish style thing, like he's granted a wish, and his wish is then it can be like mink on Earth all the time. So we get some great Christmas imagery with him, because as we get this all playing out, he stays in this Santa outfit, and at first it's all going really well and everything seems to be going perfect, people getting into the spirit of Christmas. But then there's an incident where it involves some presents which he stumbles across, which he can give to some people, but they misconstrue it and they sort of accuse him of stealing the presents, basically. Oh. So he ends up getting arrested. So we start to see things quickly go wrong for him, and you get the other side of it. So that's the setup for the episode, and it's just a great idea for a Twilight Zone episode, and a great idea to show this more, I guess, in a way, cynical side to Christmas and this department store Santa, just going for something a little bit more dark and just humanistic. Obviously, him having this addiction type thing, but also there is hope by the end of the episode as well. So they really balance the sort of light and darker stuff really well. And you've got some good set pieces. The fact that the original Twilight Zone is obviously shot in black and white, that works so well for this style episode anyway. Yeah. The palette of it works really well for a more gothic Christmas style episode. You've got the hilarious line at one point from a kid in the street where he's like, "Hey, Santa's drunk." It's so good. Just stuff like that is really funny, and you do get more comedic moments in the episode like that. So it's a good mix, and it does just feel like the feel of it, the visuals, flair, and a lot of the imagery, it does feel like a classic Christmas style episode, but with a bit more of a human style story, a bit of darkness. But yeah, it does actually have some hope at the end of the episode, because a lot of Twilight Zone episodes, because it's the nature of that sort of be careful what you wish for style thing, they, as a cautionary sort of tale, that a lot of times they do end up badly for the characters. And I mean, depending on how likable the characters are, you don't always mind that, because they sort of get their comeuppance. But in this case, he's quite a genuine human being, and you are sort of rooting for him. So the fact that we get some hope at the end, and it's fitting for a Christmas themed episode, then you do end up on a bit of a hopeful note. So that's The Night of Mink from season 2 of the original Twilight Zone.
Very nice. Yeah, I've got to revisit the Twilight Zone at some point in time, but I imagine a Christmas episode done in the Twilight Zone, I mean, that's got potential for so much stuff.
Yeah.
You can just do so much and work so much with that. So, no, that's very cool. Definitely will have to revisit that. So my number 4 is actually, okay, so I'm sticking with sitcoms, and this is actually quite fitting considering we reviewed Die Hard recently. This is the season 3 Brooklyn Nine-Nine episode, Yippee Kayak. So this episode is, so I talked about in our review, there is a character in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Jake, who loved Die Hard. There are so many references to how much he loves Die Hard. In this episode, he's forgotten to buy a Christmas present for one of his friends. So he and Boyle, who's another detective, and Gina, who is their admin assistant, they go to a department store to do some last minute shopping. Now, they can't get in the front doors because the store is closed, so they sneak in the back. And while they're there, they discover that the store is being robbed. And so Jake, of course, gets massively excited and is like, oh my God, stuck with a bunch of bad guys, alone at Christmas. It's Die Hard come to life. So, of course, the whole episode is a big reference to Die Hard, except, of course, because it's in a department store, it's, they have a lot of fun with it. Jake is having so much fun with all the references, and every time he gets on the phone with his superior is like, oh, this is awesome. And it's like, awesome? I mean, no, this is not cool, no matter how much this is my favorite movie come to life. And there's some great running gags. They have some visual callbacks to Die Hard, like Jake he starts making up names for all the bad guys and writing it on his wrist, and he's like, you will be Klaus and you will be Hans. And then he goes to call this final guy Jürgen, and then he hears over the speaker, the guy's like, hey, Matt, you there? And he's like, oh, great. bad guy's name is Matt. And then when he takes him down, he's like, after having a stupid, dumb name like Matt. And, you know, that then when he finds out that the robbers are Canadian, he gets so upset. He's like, Canadian, you're so clearly meant to be German. Are any of you German? And, you know, he's getting
That's
really
funny.
upset that, like, certain things aren't happening. Now, the reason it's called Yippee Kayak is because at the climax of the episode, Gina ends up, the admin assistant ends up getting kidnapped with the rest of the hostages, and Jake and Boyle are trying to sneak in through the vents, of course, because it's Die Hard, so we have to go through the vents. But they end up making a noise when the vent falls onto the floor and crashes. And so Jake ends up giving himself up so that Charles can fit through the vents. Now, Charles doesn't exactly know the Die Hard films and doesn't really understand Jake's love for them. So when he falls through the ceiling in his wife beater and his singlet and yells, he ends up saying, "Yippee kayak are the buckets." So that's where the yippee kayak comes from. And Jake's just like, "Oh, Charles, get it." And you completely botched the catchphrase. And Charles is like, "No, I'm pretty sure I got it right. No, it's wrong. But you did great, buddy." But the whole episode is just so much fun. And obviously, if you have seen Die Hard, you see a lot of the references to it. And Jake is just Jake's enthusiasm at like loving being in a Die Hard situation. And, you know, the fact that they have to take the bad guys down with like stuff they've found in the store. So they're taking them out with like frying pans and like golf clubs and things like that. So it's just a really fun episode. Obviously, it's paying tribute to Die Hard, but it also like links in very well to Jake's persona. And there's just a lot of like really fun character moments and really fun shout outs. So that is my number 4. I'd highly recommend it to anyone who loves Die Hard, even if you don't watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Yippee Kayak from season 3 of 9/9.
So yeah, we're getting quite a lot of crossovers from our Halloween list so far, which is good. So it sounds good. That definitely sounds like an episode that's tailored towards me. And
yes, you should definitely check it out.
Sure. And a bit like you were saying earlier about 30 Rock, then you want to check more of that show out. This is similar. I've never watched an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, so I need to get to that at some point. It does sound like it would be my sort of show. My number 4, I'm jumping 3 decades, so I'm going from the 1960s last time, or late 50s, whichever one it was, all the way to the 90s. So my number 4 it's an episode of Batman the Animated Series, and it's called Christmas with the Joker. Great titles.
That's cool. I would not have predicted that.
Okay, well, this is actually exciting for me because I'm watching Batman the Animated Series for the first time at the moment, and out Christmas themed episode. And once again, it works the holiday into the plot in a very inventive way, which I think is a staple of a lot of classic Christmas TV. So, not for the first time, the Joker has escaped from Arkham Asylum, as that becomes like almost a regular gag in the show. Yeah. They keep arresting it, catching him again, keep putting him back away, and somehow he escapes and starts causing havoc. So he's on the loose. And at this point, you've got Robin in the show. Really good conceit about it, where Robin is telling Batman it's Christmas Eve. You know, villains don't go out on Christmas Eve and commit crime.
Oh yeah, and crime just takes the night off.
yeah, exactly. He's just trying to persuade him to like stay in and enjoy Christmas and stuff like that. So that makes for a really fun dynamic, because that does match their characters. Like Batman is obviously the more serious, focused, brooding one, whereas Robin is the more lighter, playful one. So that actually fits their characters really well. But yeah, you've got this good line from Robin at some point where he says to Batman, even psychopaths spend Christmas with their mothers or something like that, which is really good. But yeah, Batman can't get his mind off it because Joker's escaped again, and he's just convinced if there's a villain which is going to spend Christmas cooking off some sort of scheme,
it's going to be the
Joker. Yeah, that's what he's thinking. Yeah. But I also like how that's carried over into like other shows. So it's a bit like that idea in Buffy, what that demons take the night off during Halloween
Yes,
sort of thing. It feels like a similar sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, Batman's not buying it. There's also this nice sort of subplot with It's a Wonderful Life because Batman's never seen it and Robin's trying to get him to watch it for the first time, and it's on TV. And there's this classic joke from Batman where he says, I've never seen it. Yeah, I couldn't get through the titles, which is really funny. And then as things go on, they're settling down on like Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, whichever it is, to watch a screening of it because it's on TV. And that's when the Joker hijacks the broadcast and he puts on his own Christmas show. So this is all plays into the Joker character so well.
Yeah,
calls
definitely.
it like the Joker's Christmas show or Joker's Christmas special. And he starts just pulling all these classic sort of pranks. Like at the start of the episode when you first see that he escapes, like it's just got him flying up in the air on this massive Christmas tree, and you've just got that classic maniacal Joker uncontrollable laugh as he shoots up. So some classic Christmas imagery, like some of the tricks he pulls and the visual like stuff with like Jack in the Box and certain things that he's using. It just becomes like an obstacle course that he keeps throwing in front of Batman and Robin. So it's a great Joker episode. It's classic Joker. You obviously have Mark Hamill voicing him, who, for comic book fans, this is probably the definitive Joker, or at least one of them. Probably him and Heath Ledger, for many people, feel like the two definitive versions, although they do play in many ways very different sides to the character, which is good stuff. But so he's on great form, and I just love the character stuff with Batman and Robin and the contrast we see about them and how it works Christmas into the plot, because there's sort of a nice payoff at the end of the episode with the It's a Wonderful Life, because Commissioner Gordon has been like kind enough to like record it so Batman can finally watch it. Yeah, so they put it on, and I think it's at the end of the film that they've watched it or something, and Batman says, yeah, it wasn't too bad, and he just makes like a sort of comment on the title. He just says something like, yeah, sometimes it is a wonderful life sort of thing. So it's just this very Batman sort of line where he does have a very murky view of the world. So it's almost like he can't go the whole hog and enjoy it, you know, and get into the season spirit. But he'll at least acknowledge that there is some hope in the world. And that's very much on theme for like the idea of Batman. It's a very dark, sort of messed up world with lots of crime in this big city, but with someone like him around, that there is at least some hope. And of course, the only way to end the episode is back in the Arkham Asylum with Joker.
Of course. Even
though he's been caught and put back in the asylum, he's cackling away because he knows one day he will escape again.
Yeah.
And to make Batman's life awkward. So great stuff. Yeah, it's a great episode of the animated series, which I highly recommend. So that's my number 4, Batman the Animated Series, Christmas with the Joker.
Well, it's very cool. I like that because, like I said, I wasn't expecting that one at all. So that one's very different. I have to say, I have been wanting to watch Batman the Animated Series, and Stephen does too. So we probably will get around to it at some point. But no, I really like that. And I can imagine a Joker-themed Christmas could be very fun and very fun to watch. So that's really cool.
And it's worth saying, considering this is early 90s animation for TV, the animation is brilliant. It is so good.
That's cool.
And probably you don't have to be a massive Batman fan to enjoy it.
3. is probably the least Christmassy episode on this list. I think it is a Christmas episode, and I went and I had a look at like your top 10 Christmas episodes, and it does tend to pop up on these lists a lot.
Sure.
So I'm going to list it because it's just such a great episode, and the climax, at the very least, does seem to play into the magic Christmas. So this is The Constant from Lost.
Okay.
Yes. So this is one of Lost's best episodes. I love The Constant. So The Constant focuses, this is from season 4. This focuses around Desmond Hume, who is such a great character.
Amazing.
Everyone loves Desmond. And at this point in time, we've met Daniel Faraday, who is the scientist who's come to the island to deal with all of the time fluxes and the time travel. And this episode really gets into that. So in this episode, we see Desmond. Now, we know that Desmond is a bit of an anomaly when it comes to like being on the island. There is something about Desmond that works differently on the island to the other people. And I kind of love that part of his character. So in this episode, we see present Desmond and past Desmond character. We just love Desmond so much. And if you've watched Lost and you don't love Desmond, then I'm sorry, you're wrong. There's just no there's no argument there. You're just wrong. Yes. So at this point in time, we've started to notice anomalies on the island. And Desmond, as a character, seems to be an anomaly in and of himself on the island. There's something different about Desmond, and we get more into this as the series goes on. But it's very, very cool and very interesting to see Desmond be this anomaly. And in this episode, present Desmond and past Desmond. So Desmond in the past had some issues, you know, with his relationship and his self-worth and his self-image. So past Desmond and present Desmond, because of this, they go through this weird area on the island that causes the two of them to switch bodies. And we mostly focus on past Desmond when he keeps switching back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now, we've also met this character at this point called Daniel Faraday. He's another character I love. And he's like a bit of a scientist guy, and he's come to the island to work out these anomalies. Now, when Desmond starts figuring out what's happening to him, how he's switching back and forth, basically, Faraday warns him, you need something in both timelines. So basically, you need a constant. You need something that is present then and present now, because that will anchor you. And if you don't have a constant, then you're fucked. Basically, at some point in time, one of your personalities is going to get trapped, and it's going to basically throw the world off its axis. So, of course, Desmond realizes that his constant is Penny, who is his girlfriend or his ex-girlfriend. Now, he and Penny have some issues. Desmond has a lot of issues with his self-worth and never quite thinks that he's good enough for Penny. Now, Penny, being Penny, because she's awesome, never buys into his self-pitying crap. She always tells him straight up that she loves him, and a lot of their issues are mostly just him. So this episode focuses on this Desmond going back and forth and trying to get Penny's phone number. He needs her phone number in the present so that he can call her before everything starts going, you know, crazy for him. And when he goes to see her to get her number, I'm pretty sure it's Christmas Eve. And they also find out back on the freighter that it's Christmas in the real world. And I think he's with Saeed. And Saeed's like, God, I didn't even notice that it was Christmas. But you find out that it is Christmas time. And then, of course, he's switching back and forth. And then we get that beautiful climax to the episode where he actually calls her from the freighter. She picks up. That's right. Because when he gets her number, she's like, why do you want my number? Go away. And he's like, I'm not going to call you for 3 years. And she's like, what? And he's like, I won't call until December 25th, 2004. I will not call you, you know, for 3 years. And then when he calls her, oh my God, it's the most beautiful phone call. Both the actors are so good in this scene. And of course, they've got the big Christmas tree in the background on Penny's side. So this is why I do think that even though Christmas is not prevalent through the episode, I think it can still be counted as a Christmas episode, because the ending, when he finally gets a hold of Penny and his consciousness snaps back and he's grounded and he remembers where he is. I mean, yes, it's Lost, so there's always weird stuff going on, but I'm going to put this episode down to the magic of Christmas. And there's a beautifully edited scene between Desmond and Penny when they're on the phone and they're talking to each other and they're saying, I love you, remember, I love you, I'm here no matter what. And it actually makes me cry if I'm in, you know, the right mood. It's beautiful. It's done so well. And I think that's why this episode is so well remembered. So while this episode, like all the other ones I've talked about on this list, are definite obvious Christmas episodes. They've got the Christmas imagery. They use the Christmas theme. This one might not be as much, but I'm going to use the technicality of it being set at Christmas and that final scene to slip it into this list because it's just such a great episode centered on such a great character in such a great show. So let us know in the comments, guys, if you think that the constant is I feel like this is the Die Hard of Christmas episodes. You know, it's that episode that people, they want to argue, is it a Christmas episode? Is it not? I'm going to say it is. So that's my number 3, The Constant from Lost.
I love it. Yeah. And you've convinced me, actually, because I was a bit on the fence about that. And I think what's convinced me is when you mentioned about the crucial detail about him. It's on Christmas Day.
Yes.
He's not going to ring until Christmas Day in the future. And that convinces me it is because it makes it important to the plot. And like you said, the Christmas tree. So, yeah, no, it is a Christmas episode. Might be my favourite episode of Lost overall.
I hear you. It's so good.
One of the best ones, definitely.
Absolutely.
I think it's a perfect episode of TV. And I do love Desmond like you. And also, it's funny because I think it might be out of that or maybe another Desmond episode in season 5, The Variable.
Oh, yes, yes. Yeah.
So I think it's out of those two for like maybe my favourite of the whole show. So it does show you what a good character Desmond is. And I mean, I just love it. Everyone's a brother to Desmond. It's like
he is, yeah. So
see you in the next life, my brother. That sums him up so well, especially since the time travel stuff. So yeah, everyone's a brother to Desmond. We're gonna say what is my number 3, and my number 3 is Buffy Amends.
Nice, very nice.
Over Christmas, there's a lot of Christmas imagery. You see them going like tree shopping, Buffy and Joyce, and that becomes sort of important to the plot because it's on that land patch of ground where this first evil is like sort of brewing type thing. So I think that if nothing else makes it a Christmas episode because it is like important. But there's lots of imagery. The episode really gets a feel for the holiday season and just the excitement that boils about it when you're coming up to the season. Also, some of the conversations with the characters about what they're all going to do is quite fun. I really love Willow during the episode reminding everyone that
I was just going to say
Jewish, not everybody worships Santa.
Yeah, I love that
So there's some good stuff with that. There's some great stuff obviously with Willow and Oz during the episode. Willow getting the Barry on. So great scene with her and Oz, one, and it's a big angel mythology episode, and probably a big one in setting up a lot of things that you see when he gets his own show as well. And that's that him and Buffy are being haunted, and like Buffy's appearing in his dreams or he's appearing in hers, and you're getting this psychic sort of connection. And so Angel is being haunted by his past. We start with a flashback from his past of some of like the damage he did. Christmas Carol sort of feel.
It does definitely.
And I think that's what they were directly referencing probably in some ways. This ideas of like past ghosts like haunting you and you having to make a decision, like try and make amends for that stuff. And this is why this is such an important episode for Angel, because he has to face up to some of his demons from the past. And like it's a big turning point in him actually making the decision that he's been given a second chance on the earth, and he's been given that second chance to atone for all this, or at least in his mind, that's why he's been brought back, because he's been brought back from basically death or spending the rest of his days in eternal hell, that kind of thing. And he's been put back on the earth, and he can't figure out why. So that's what he wants to find out. And it becomes a really personal episode for Angel, where he has to make that decision. Because at one point, like near the end of the episode, he just decides, no, I give up sins in the past. I don't deserve to live, so I'm just going to hand myself over to the forces of evil.
Yeah.
And what this episode sets up is then it actually sets up something that comes back in the final season, which is this idea of the first evil.
The first. Yeah.
And that they're the ones who's actually working, as Buffy says at one point, the mojo on Angel. They're the ones who actually appears to him, and they're manipulating into thinking you've been brought back for this reason. And you've got a very memorable cameo from the Jenny actress.
Yes, Rabia Lamort comes back. Yeah, she's really good.
And that's obviously perfect casting because of the way Angelus took her away from Giles, and that's why Giles still has this big resentment towards him. So the fact that she's the face of all this and the symbol is just perfect. And I do enjoy watching that actress play a more sinister
role. Yeah.
You can tell she's having a lot of fun with it in the episode. So it's a really big dramatic episode. It's got a Christmas feel throughout it. I also like the Scoobies when they get together at some point in the library and start researching together. I like this idea of this is what they do, even though it's the holiday season.
Yeah.
There's something which needs to be done. We need to investigate. We need to get to the bottom of this. What's causing this? So we're going to band together. Character stuff, some great mythology, and very haunting, very, very well directed by Whedon. But it's a classic Christmas style episode in a way. It mixes the light and the dark. So because it is quite a dark, haunting episode, that actually makes the lighter stuff at the end, the more hopeful stuff, all the more powerful. Din is just fantastic. It's one of my favourite endings to any Buffy.
Yeah, it's great.
Some people I know are a bit cynical and say shit on it, and it's that's cheesy, but
a little bit of cheese works now and then.
Yeah, it fits what they're going for, and it fits just this idea of the snow becoming a signal, almost prodding Angelus that maybe you're meant to stick around after all.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes sense. Then you end a Christmas style episode with some snow, and you have this random outburst of snow, and the direction is so perfect from Whedon, the way it goes around all the different characters.
Yes.
I love the image of Sander in the snow in the bag, because he's camping outside, and also the image of Elijah Diskew as Faith out in the snow with her hands out, soaking it in, because it's one of these things that can randomly happen in America where they didn't expect it to be snowing around the holidays, and it just comes out of nowhere. And that's another thing to say, mention Faith, because this is an interesting episode from that character's point of view, because it appears at this point at the end of the episode, because earlier in the episode she's been invited to come over for Christmas by Buffy. At first it looks like she's not going to go, but in the end she does go, and she actually starts having a good time. And that would lead you to think that the way things go later in the season with her, it would pan out a different way, sort of thing. So I actually like the drama of that and the way they subvert that.
No, and the fact that it is Christmas time and you've got Christmas hunting, and like you, I love Willow's little, still Jewish people, not everyone worships Santa, and it's really great. It's definitely a Christmas episode, and I really like that Buffy at least did one Christmas episode, because I know it's not really you expect them to do more Halloween, so the fact that they did decide to do a Christmas episode and they did it so well is really cool. So 2 is also another dramatic one. I've actually honest, I do have more dramatic ones on here than I have comedic ones. So my number 2 is the Smallville season 5 episode Lexmas. So this is a great episode. This is kind of like an alternate, not really, It's a Wonderful Life, but basically Lex gets a look at where his life could go. So at this point in time in Smallville season 5, Lex is definitely on his way to being a villain. We've gone past the Lex and Clark are friends stage, and we're at the Lex is starting to delve into some seedy, dodgy crap stage. And at the beginning of the episode, he gets shot and he ends up in a coma. And while he's in a coma, he's visited by the ghost of his mother, who shows him a life that he could have if he turns his back on the Luthor Empire and chooses friendship and love. So in this idyllic life, he's married to Lana Lang because, of course, he wants everything that Clark has. So, of course, he wants Lana as well. So he's married to Lana. They live on a farm. They have kids. Clark is still his best friend. Jonathan, Clark's father, whose approval Lex has always wanted, basically says, Lex, you're like a son to me. He's completely cut off all ties with Luthor Corp, with his father. And you get this really beautiful, look at what Lex's life could be. He's happy, he's content. Him and Clark are so close, and I love any interaction with him and Clark. Their relationship is it is the heart of that show. And you get a lot of Christmas imagery. And then, of course, because this is a test of Lex's character, Lana goes into labor and starts to bleed out as she's giving birth to their child. And of course, she starts to die in the aftermath of the birth. So Lex goes to his father to try and get help. And Lionel basically says, no, you turned your back on this entire world. If you had stayed in here, you'd have the money and you'd have the resources to save her, but you didn't. So goodbye. So Lex goes back to his dying wife, and she basically says to him as she's dying, she's like, be a good man. You are a good man. Stay like this. Remember that you have love, that you are loved, and that you can be a good person. And then she dies in this thing. Now, Lana dying, this is a little tangent I have to have. This is the second time she's killed this season to push the male storyline forward. So that's a whole big thing that I got to talk about at some point in time. But anyway.
Second?
She
comes back to life?
She's killed before. Yeah,
okay.
She's killed in another episode to give Clark motivation. So, poor Lana's just a fridged woman in season 5. But anywho, so Lana dies, and Lex is then once again visited by his mother's ghost. And he's like, how can this be a good life? If my wife is going to die, how is this a good thing? And she's like, because you are a good person, because you have love in this life, because you have family. Losing one person isn't going to change all that. You need to choose, you need to decide. And of course, tragically, when Lex comes out of his coma, he decides to go with power and money, because he decides that, yes, that is what will make him happy. And this way, if he does end up with Lana in the future, he can save her. And there's actually this really kind of haunting final shot of Lex standing in the window of his father's office, and you see his mother's ghost just kind of standing there, not being able to reach out to him. So it uses that kind of, that magic Christmas spirit of like I said, kind of like a Christmas Carol, like this is what your life could be if you make the right choices. And of course, because it's Lex Luthor, we all know the choice he's going to make. It's one of those horrible things like when you watch Titanic and you just think, maybe this time the ship won't hit the iceberg. But you know that Lex is going to make the wrong choice. And what's really interesting is that this episode, pretty much from this episode on out, Lex is the villain of the show. So it's a very, very big turning point for Lex, and it's done in a really beautiful way. And the episode is beautiful. It's got some really gorgeous moments. It's got some great character moments. Seeing Lex's mother is always really fun, because he has a lot of guilt surrounding her death when he was younger. And Lex as a character, I mean, I don't think, Superman purists might want to smack me for this, but I don't think there's ever going to be a better Lex Luthor than Michael Rosenbaum, because he is just so good. I know it's a big claim, but he is written so well in this show. And Michael Rosenbaum, the way he just embodies this character and the struggle that you see Lex go through and the different layers to him. And I think that Lexmas really brings it out. So I don't love season 5 of Smallville. It's actually, I think, one of the weakest seasons, but this is definitely one of the better episodes. And I just really love the way it weaponizes and uses the Christmas theme to kind of push Lex into his kind of real start of darkness. So that's my number 2, Lexmas from Smallville.
I do like the title, and
it's cool, isn't it?
As I said last time you brought up Smallville, I have heard good things about that performance, even though, you know, some people shit on the show, and it's clearly
it's
not
one of those shows that does go downhill.
It's not to everyone's.
No.
But also it's not to everyone's taste, you know, because it is like the more sort of teen style version of Superman. So that's not going to be for everyone. But yeah, I still haven't seen it. I think they recently put it on Amazon Prime or something.
Oh, okay.
I'll get round to it at some point. I will check out a few episodes, see what I think about it. Okay. Interesting stuff. You've made a good case and you must like it. It's your number 2. So my number 2, and I was split on this one, which one to go for, but my number 2 is another episode from another one of my favourite ever TV shows. It's an episode of The West Wing, and the episode is called Noel, so classic Christmas title. And it's so funny, you wouldn't necessarily think this of The West Wing, but I'm pretty sure there's a Christmas episode for just about every season, or most seasons anyway. And it's probably just because it's set around the White House, so I guess they take in the holidays and they like to show what the different characters are doing and work certain things in. So it actually makes sense, but because it's like a political show, you wouldn't necessarily have thought there would naturally be Christmas tie-ins. But so this was a tough choice because the other episode I considered was an episode called Holy Night, which they're both really strong episodes, and I think they're both examples of the West Wing at its very best when it comes to the character drama and some of the writing, some great acting as well. And they're both within like the first 4 seasons, which is like probably, well, definitely the peak of the show for me. But in the end, I went with Noel, which is the slightly darker episode. And I went for that because I think what the episode deals with is really bold for them to be doing. And it sort of shows you why the West Wing is such a compelling character, like drama series to watch all the way through, because it follows up from an incident at the end of season 1 where there was like an attempted assassination on the president, so like the limousine and that's being shot at, and there were a couple of people like wounded, including the Josh Lyman character who's played by Bradley Whitford. He was shot, is in critical condition at one point. So the fallout from that into the next season, into season 2, follows his like mental state and how he's coming to terms with that. And they assign him a psychologist, Stanley Backer, in Halloween H2O, the one who plays Jamie Lee Curtis's girlfriend.
Oh,
that
the guy that looks vaguely like George Clooney.
George Clooney, it's that. He plays the. It's something Baldwin, isn't it? I'm pretty sure.
I think so. Yeah, we'll just call him knockoff George Clooney.
We'll say but yeah, he plays the therapist in this, but. No, so it follows that storyline through where, like, Josh still hasn't come to terms with what happened to him, and he's letting it affect his everyday work, his everyday life, and he's just becoming very jumpy, very nervous around people, and just overreaction to certain things, and just putting too much pressure on himself with certain things, and So it really deals with PSD and
Yeah,
PSD, and this is a great example of the drama just following through on things. Not
yeah,
just it's a clean cut. A few episodes down the line, we're going to go back to normal. It actually gets to grips with this sort of issue, and it becomes a very dark episode as well, but also a very human and emotional episode. And Bradley Whitford is a great actor anyway, but
yeah.
a lot of the stuff he does with certain characters, including this character, is more like the deadpan sort of slick sort of humor, which he does so well. But so whenever he gets to play a more dramatic type role or scene, it's really rewarding, and it shows that he does have a good range. Uh, and this is a good example of that, because the scenes between them in the episode, they just really build very nicely. They're really well paced. They're very intimate type things, and just the psychology of it is so well done. But it impressed me than this sort of show would go that dark into things, and would actually address these sorts of like sensitive issues. And it just felt very authentic and quite realistic too.
Well, I've heard the West Wing is really quite good at that, at delving into the more serious issues and doing them in a very realistic way that makes it very relatable. So I've heard that they're quite good at those types of episodes.
Yeah, and bearing in mind this would have been it's season 2, so it's about it's like either 99 or 2000. So you're talking at a period where maybe these things weren't addressed so much on TV. So probably a bit ahead of its time in there. So those scenes are obviously like the bedrock of the episode, but there's other solid drama stuff going on around the office. There's a link sort of where you have CJ who finds out about this Jewish painting, and it's like a storyline where a woman has reacted badly to seeing it, so she looks into like the history of it, and she finds out that it was a present given to the White House years ago, but it's a personal present thing from the woman who actually it belongs to her. So that's why she sort of has a reaction to it. So sort of by the end of the episode, CJ gives the present back, the painting back type thing. So, and I think although it's only a small thing, the fact that it's a Jewish painting, I think that's important, because once again, the differences between Jewish people and them not celebrating Christmas. This is obviously over the holidays. So I think that's actually deliberate, because the other episode I was going to mention, which I almost went with, Holy Night, that has a big Jewish themed storyline in it, because the main storyline in that is that the character of Toby, who's Jewish, his father comes to visit him at the office, and he hasn't seen his father for years. And there's an incident in the past where the father was involved in killing someone, and so that's why they've had this exchange sort of relationship where they've not seen each other. And Toby, just because of the past, just doesn't want anything to do with his father. And it's actually Josh who arranges the father to come in, because he's trying to encourage them to talk and stuff. So it's feel to the episode, because there's carol singers and that at the White House. But once again, there is a Jewish tie-in in that storyline. So I think they are sort of playing that off with the more traditional Christmas type celebrations. And so there are some great Christmas episodes. But I think I went for Noel just because I was impressed with some of the drama of that storyline, and just how brave it was for them to go that deep into it. And you got some great acting from Bradley Whitford as well. So, yeah. But they do make them quite fun as well. There are some lighter moments, because in I think it's Holy Night, Danny Buchanan, who's a a reporter who's got like an on-off thing with CJ. He shows back up, but it's the surprise that he's dressed as Santa Claus. So he sort of like kisses her as dressed as Santa, and that's how she finds out it's like Danny back type thing. So,
yeah.
So they have some fun as well. But yeah, in the end, I went with Noel. But there are some really strong Christmas West Wing episodes. Yeah,
Very cool. The West Wing is one of those shows that I had been meaning to watch for so long. My best friend loves it. She's shown me several episodes of the show, just to get a taste for it. I remember another friend of mine just showed me like the president's entrance on the show. And I mean, Martin Sheen.
Great.
And I mean, the cast is fantastic. Allison Janney, it just looks like such a great show. And I will get around to watch it, but I know that it's also quite a cerebral show. So I'm like, I need to be in the right state of mind and ready to actually concentrate on the politics of the show and stuff before I actually get around to watching it. But I will watch it at some point. It's definitely on my to-watch list because I hear nothing but good stuff about that show. I think it was one of the shows that started to usher in what they call the golden age of television. I think it was one of the forerunners. It's a Sorkin run show, isn't it? It's Aaron Sorkin. Yeah, and he's always great with like dialogue just putting people in great positions and then just having the dialogue bounce off everyone. It's just fantastic. So I definitely will get around to watching that at some point.
And
so should we do some?
Developed like the whole idea of the walk and talk as well. Which
the walk and talk. Yes, that's a staple in that show, isn't it? Yeah.
And that's why it takes maybe a few episodes for you to get into the groove, because it is. Yeah. It does very much feel like that very fast-paced, White House atmosphere. So good stuff.
Very cool. So should we do some honourable mentions before we get to our number ones?
Okay, so like the one I mentioned earlier was obviously a Mary Tyler Moore episode. Christmas and the Hard Luck Kid 2. So that's a season 1 episode, and it's actually the only episode I've seen of the show. It's obviously another one which is always very much talked about, very ahead of its time for like a female style character in a sitcom. And obviously, it's not that long ago she passed away, Mary Tyler Moore. But a bit of a staple. But the story in that episode is that she actually selfishly decides to work Christmas Day because one of her co-workers has a family that he would miss out on not like spending the holiday with if he has to work. So she actually swaps with him, and it becomes a thing where she's left with being alone in the office on Christmas Day, because she's like a reporter, so they're trying to get across, and sometimes the demands of that job you do sort of have to work with over the holidays. And there's some fun with that about sort of making gags about the fact that even the cleaners are like given the night off sort of thing. So there's a lot of fun with that. There's a fun like present scene where she's like unwrapping presents with her best friends. There's some good sort of gags about that, about the best friend, her boyfriend or husband is like a surgeon type thing, so they make gags about this sort of suggestive like type doll she's got type thing, which is good stuff. But what struck me about the episode was just how charming and engaging it was, and just what a delightful presence she is in the episode. She's got just so much charisma, but she just feels like a very grounded, likable character. And just like near the end of the episode where she's like in the office all alone and she just starts humming a Christmas theme like song and starts doing a little dance, and it just puts you in mind of being alone like at work or something, when there's no one else around, and you just get in that headspace, and workers coming back because they feel sorry for her, and they all decide to work over the night as well, so that she doesn't feel left out. A few Seinfeld episodes I sort of could have gone with. Episode called The Race, which I think might be my favourite Christmas one. There's a whole like funny storyline about the fact that Elaine's boyfriend is a communist in
Oh no.
yeah, and there's all gags about that where they're starting to see some of the way he dresses and some of the, like, because he starts reading like the Daily Worker, so George starts speculating, and he has that funny line it's like, no, Elaine says, no, he's just very well read, and George is like, is he very well read or is he just very well read? And
nice.
Very good. And it's when Elaine gets all excited when he confirms, and there's just lots of fun gags about that sort of thing in the episode, because at one point they order Chinese from this place that they've been getting Chinese food from years, or he has, and then because Elaine like pisses off the guy who she's ordering from, like he puts them on the list, so they actually get blacklisted from this. And so that's once again a metaphor for like communism. So it's good stuff. And then the main storyline is like a race between Jerry and his old high school like friend who he bumped into, and there's this controversy about, they had this race years ago where Jerry cheated, but he never owned up to it, and like this character of Duncan has been convinced for all these years that he cheated, but Jerry would never race again or admit to it. And we come back to the Superman theme in this one as well, because Jerry happens to be dating someone called Lois, and he loves Superman. So it's like, finally, I'm dating someone called Lois. And that plays into the episode, because then when they race at the end, because like Lois works for Duncan, and he like threatens to sack her, so like she convinces Jerry into racing. And so there's just lots of lines to that, and they actually play the race to the Superman theme at the end, and
nice.
It's so good, and it just ends with Jerry once again. He cheats because he gets like confused.
Of course he does.
Yeah, but there's like a car thing that goes off, and he thinks that's like the buzzer, so he starts. And it just ends with them embracing, and it's like she's like, "Will you come to Hawaii with me, Jerry?" And he's just like, "Maybe I will, Lois. Maybe I will." And then he just winks to the camera, so. That's probably the pick. There's also Red Dot from season 3, which is very entertaining. That's set over the holidays. Elaine dates a co-worker who's recently a recovering alcoholic, but one, like Jerry mixes up the drinks and gives him the alcoholic one, so he ends up whichever way it is, on the wagon, off the wagon, and that's a joke in the episode, which is the right term.
Yeah.
And they do a really cool thing in the episode, because you get like, how you get in the middle of the episode, Jerry doing like a stand-up type routine.
Yeah.
Well, they actually incorporate that into the story, because the guy actually shows up at Jerry's stand-up thing and he starts heckling him. And he's
that's awesome.
Getting him back on the wagon type thing. So, and there's a great reference to Cape Fear near the end of the episode as
nice.
well. So that's a really good episode. And then the strike from the final season, which is when George's father has come up with his own holiday, because he's anti-Christmas. He calls it Festivus, and it's something which has haunted George all these years, and there's just certain things like Festivus feats of strength, and I'll just say that because like season 9 is one of the weaker seasons, but I'll say that that's a better episode from that season. So a few picks there. Also The Office US, a Ben Honegger Christmas, which is a great 2-parter from The Office. I really recommend that episode. That's a lot of fun. You've got some great drunken karaoke in that episode. Always
Nice.
a great holiday staple. Also, speaking of The Office UK, the Christmas specials from that show, really good, really good
Okay.
payoff. And I wouldn't swap anything for the moment where David Brent finally tells the nasty bully Chris Finch. It's like he finally stands up to him and says, "Chris, why don't you just fuck off?"
Nice.
Yeah, that's been coming for like 2 series, so I wouldn't swap that for anything. So yeah, a few honourable mentions. Yeah, that's about
Very
it.
nice.
Yeah.
So I only have a few as well, because I mean, I there aren't like Christmas episodes I find, I don't know, just not as great sometimes as Halloween episodes. Maybe they just don't know how to utilize the holiday as well. But I do have a few. So I've got another sitcom one, and that is How Lily Stole Christmas from How I Met Your Mother, which is a great episode in season 2. So that's the one. So this is so at the end of season 1, obviously Marshall and Lily break up, and in this episode, Lily hears Ted call her a not very nice word on the answering machine. And I love the way How Much Your Mother gets away with this, the way they sub in certain things for other things. So the word is the C word, which we won't say because we don't want this video to somehow get slapped with something on YouTube. I don't think you can say the C word on YouTube, but they use the word Grinch instead. So, the running gag throughout the episode is that every time you hear the word Grinch used, it's the other word. So basically, because Lily hears Ted call her this, until he decides to apologize to her, she decides to take Christmas away. So she takes all the decorations down from the apartment. She takes the Christmas cookies out, and she goes back to her apartment and decorates her tiny little apartment with like everything. And the whole episode is basically Ted trying to like apologize to Lily and her just being like, no, I'm not listening to it. And eventually it comes to the conclusion that even though Lily and Marshall broke up and she said sorry to Marshall, Ted's like, you never said sorry to me, Lily. He's like, you were like one of my best friends and you just left. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually a good point. And so they end up making up at the end. But there is this scene at the end of the episode that makes me cringe just because of what it's implying. So Ted's gone to have Christmas dinner with his very religious family who don't even give presents because they're so religious. And there's like 4 or 5 kids. And then Lily comes to the door and she apologizes for calling Ted a Grinch. But the kids overhear her. So the next thing you know is the kid's like, Mummy, what's a Grinch? And the mum's just like, oh God, and drops the whole turkey. And then all of a sudden the kids just start chanting, Grinch, Grinch, Grinch. But because you know what they're supposed to be saying, it's like, oh, this is not good. But I love that episode. And again, it uses, like, I just love that Lily's punishment is to like literally steal Christmas and just take everything out of the apartment and like punish Ted that way. So I've got that one. I also almost went with A Pretty Little Liars Christmas episode from season 5, which again has a similar title, How the A Stole Christmas. So this is kind of in season 5. There's been a major character that was killed off just before this episode. So she appears as a ghost throughout the episode, and she's haunting the main, like the main character of the episode, which is Allison. And so there's a lot of like, again, ghosts of Christmas past kind of thing. You get some reveals that what's going on in the season. Their girls attend a Christmas ball where they're basically chasing Allison like through a Christmas maze. So there's lots of great imagery. And again, it's using that whole juxtaposition of it's Christmas, so it should be bright and fun and happy, but it's actually really sinister because one of our friends was just murdered and there's like sinister stuff happening here. So it kind of uses, again, that juxtaposition of Christmas. And then the last one I just wanted to mention is one from The Vampire Diaries, which again, I just love the way they use Christmas. So again, this is a season 4 episode, O Come All Ye Faithful. So we have a very Christmassy title. And in this episode, we get a culmination of the storyline of Klaus and his hybrid. So Klaus is a vampire who is also a werewolf, and he can turn other vampires, or rather other werewolves, into vampires, and they become hybrids. And he wants to build like this big hybrid army. In this episode, he finds out that they've actually managed to break the bond that exists between him and his hybrids, and they're no longer under his control. And so we have this whole Christmassy episode where everyone's really happy, and then you get this brilliant scene right in the middle of the episode, which is set to Oh Holy Night, where Klaus slaughters like 12 hybrids in one go. So there's blood and heads and guts flying everywhere, and it's all, oh, holy night. And it's so good. And then right at the end of the episode, he ends up killing a main character's parent. So we get a big character death at the end of the episode. And again, it's set to like, oh, come all ye faithful. So it's this really haunting, beautiful Christmas tune while Klaus drowns someone's mother in a fountain. So again, I just really love the juxtaposition of Christmas being used versus the really dark stuff. And the reason I didn't put these ones on this list is because I just feel like the ones that I've got on the list, I just feel that little bit more Christmassy. They give me a bit more of that warmth and that bit of that warm feeling. And number one, which I think you might actually know because there were 2 episodes that we thought we would have crossover, and we did have them crossover, because my number one is Amends from Buffy. I love Amends. And yes, Amends is definitely a Christmas episode. I mean, like you said, you have all the Christmas imagery. You have almost the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future appear to Angel. One thing I really did like about this episode is not only do we see, because we see the ghosts from the 1800s, but I love that we see one of the ghosts that Angel sees is a businessman who looks like he's from the 90s. And I'm like, oh my God, we're seeing one of Angelus's victims from when he was Angelus in season 2 of Buffy, because the Angelus period is so centered around Buffy, we forget that he would have had other victims. And so you see this businessman talking, and he's saying something like, what struck me was how peaceful they looked. They'd been laid like they were just sleeping. So I just love that they reference the fact that while Buffy was fighting other battles, Angelus was he was terrorizing Sunnydale, and there were other victims of his. So I really like that little callback, showing that there are victims outside of Buffy's orbit that we didn't see. I think that David is really good in this episode. I think they really give him a lot to work with, and I think his portrayal of Angel's angst is quite good. I love his and Buffy's shared dreams. If nothing else, for that glorious mustache that he has in that first flashback. I mean, that thing's magnificent. If I was Buffy, that's what I'd be disturbed by the most. I'd be like, forget the murder, dude. What was going on with your facial hair? And of course, the climax of the episode, I think, is beautiful, with Angel and Buffy having that breakdown on the bluff. I particularly like the part where Buffy says, I know everything that you did because you did it to me, because I do think that in season 3 of Buffy, and we'll talk about this more when we get to it, but I'll just drop a little hint of where we're going to go. I think that the Angel relationship is miswritten in season 3 of Buffy, and I think that there should have been more focus on the Angelus period as opposed to what they go with, which is, oh, Buffy's dating an older guy who can't give her a normal life. We'll get more into that, but I like that this episode really focuses on the Angelus period. I really like that they show that Giles still has trust issues towards Angel. I've seen fans get angry at Giles for answering the door with a crossbow, but not me. Giles, after what Angelus put him through, oh no, Giles can hate him until the end of his days. He has earned that. So I think that scene where he comes, it's a great scene. First of all, you've got the tension between Angel and Giles just because of, what happened during the Angelus period. But I also love that Jenny appears in the apartment and Angel is all like, can't you see her? And you just think, oh God, it's such a callback to Jenny's death and everything. And the snow at the end, I'm with you. I love the snow. I understand how people might say it's a little cheesy, but like I said, sometimes you need a little cheese.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little cheese works. Cheese is not always a bad thing if it's done right. And I think that the snow is done so well. And like you said, that little montage of seeing everyone, Oz and Willow and Xander out in his sleeping bag and Faith at Buffy's house. Plus there's some fun lines. I mean, the Willow line that we talk about, but I also love when Buffy's at home and she's fixing up a tree and Joyce is just like, so Angel's on top? And Buffy's like, what was that about Angel? And she's like, Angel or Star, So I think it's got some really fun bits, and it just makes you feel warm. And I think as a Angel shipper, this is a really good episode for Buffy and Angel. I think it's a great Buffy and Angel episode. I think it really shows the fears that Angel has of losing his soul again. And I think there's a line in this episode that really emphasizes that it's not about sex with Buffy. It's about Buffy as a person making Angel happy enough that if he has sex, he'll lose his soul. Because he says in this, he's like, because I want to take comfort in you. It's like, not I want you or I want to sleep with you. It's I want you to make me feel better and I want to feel better around you. But he's not allowed to feel better because that leads to him being too happy. So yeah, I just think this is a great episode that just explores so much of Angel and Buffy and the repercussions of the Angelus period, and the fact that it's set against Christmas, which is such a magical time, and then the Buffyverse can be used as like a magical thing. So and of course, you know, it being a Buffy episode and Buffy being one of my favorite shows, that's what makes it my number one. I love Amends. I usually do watch it around Christmas just to get the Christmas spirit, and so that is my number one Christmas episode, Amends from Buffy.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, I do as well. I mean, obviously, I rewatched it recently anyway, but you know, it is one I do tend to stick on around Christmas anyway, and it is a bit of a staple of the season for me. And I can see you are obviously a massive Angel fan, a massive David Boreanaz fan, so this is such a big episode for him.
It could almost be seen as a sneaky backdoor pilot because a lot of the themes that come up, are definitely explored more in Angel. So you could almost count this as the backdoor pilot to Angel. It's very well done.
And the ending as well, part of the thing is, for me, is the way it's directed and just how cinematic it feels. Not just with the cutting around and the style, but also the music as well, which is so good. And that's what makes it feel like a classic Christmas ending to an episode. Pretty much a perfect episode. When you go through that episode by scene, there's no bad scenes.
No.
Really.
No,
it's probably a rare, like, perfect episode. So I love that episode. Okay, so my number one, and I'm sort of going old school, and I'm sticking on the sort of Christmas Carol theme really with this, because it is a version of that story, so it actually links quite nicely into like that Buffy episode, but completely different. I've gone for a classic sitcom episode, and I don't know if you've ever seen any of this show or not, but I've gone for Blackadder's Christmas Carol.
Oh, I haven't seen all of Blackadder, but I have definitely seen bits and pieces of the show. Yes, great show from what I have seen.
And this is obviously a very British sort of pick, because Blackadder is such a staple of British sitcoms, and it's personally it's my favourite British sitcom. I know a lot of people would say Only Fools and Horses, but I love that show too. But I've got my taste, you know, it leans a bit more into Blackadder. I love a lot of the deadpan humour. I love just the whole conceit of the show, the way they go through different periods of history,
time periods,
and the way they sort of play with that. And it's obviously the role that made Rowan Atkinson, and he's so good in the role, so funny.
Yes, he is.
You've got a lot of entertaining characters around him. You've got the classic odd couple relationship with him and Baldrick, who's so funny as well. Like, in many ways, that makes the show. But so, this is a Christmas special or one-off episode, which is a version of A Christmas Carol. So you've got, obviously, Edmund Blackadder as, like, the Scrooge-type character, and you've got all the normal supporting characters you get in that. But the twist of the episode is then they actually turn that around on its head, and what they actually do is then, with this being Blackadder and being a very, you know, self-obsessed, shallow sort of character with no real self-awareness, he actually doesn't see the error of his ways. He actually sees the value of being a villain. So and that's the twist on the episode. And it doesn't have that twist. Sort of like ending of the original. They turn the whole thing completely around. And you've got a brilliant cameo by Robbie Coltrane, R.I.P. We recently great actor, sadly missed now, but he yeah, he appears. He basically plays all three ghosts. Past,
Nice.
present, future, and he does this funny thing where he makes like a sound effect where they're going into like the flashbacks or which is pretty funny, and he looks very like spooky and gothic, which is fitting. But the scenes with them are just so funny because like he shows Blackadder like the different versions of events of how they could turn out depending on his decisions, and yeah, Blackadder just points out that, well, actually, in the versions where I don't do like the right thing when I'm actually being a villain and stuff, things actually worked out pretty well for me. And I just love the transactions where like Robbie could trade some, well, maybe, but you have to see the bigger picture sort of thing. So him trying to convince him that you should actually go the other way is really fun. And the classic example of that is like the final sort of vision is like in the future, and it's actually like a sci-fi, almost like a Flash Gordon style setup. And what we see two different versions. So we see a version where Baldric is like the king and emperor of the universe, and Blackadder is actually his servant who comes out in this flattering like leather type gear setup. But then when it's the other way round, where it's like the more villainous version, Blackadder is actually like the emperor and Baldric.
Yeah.
So they reverse it. So that's when Blackadder, who actually like throughout the episode, they've actually like toned him down a bit, where they've made him like reasonably likable, but it's like by the end of the episode he's like, screw that, I'm having much more fun and success as like the villain.
Yeah.
So it returns to the classic Blackadder where he's being like mean to everyone at the end. So it's a complete turnaround, but there's also a fun little gag at the end where he's visited by like a member of the royal family, and he stands to like become rich because they've got like a royal seal sort of thing that he can get rich off.
Yeah.
And because he's told Baldwin to tell everybody to like sod off who comes to the door, he doesn't realise that the king or someone like that has come to the door, and Baldric has told him to go away. and so when Baldric tells him who it was, like, no, that can't be true because like the king would have like the royal seal, and Baldric's like, oh, you mean something like this? And that's like the end of the episode. So that's very good. But yeah, it's a bit of a classic. It's a staple over here in the UK. And
Yeah.
it's such a fun like reversal of that whole story.
Yeah, that's great, but it definitely fits Blackadder as a series. Like, I like that even though it's turning the original story on its head, it's something that you go, oh yeah, 100%. Because like if he suddenly changed all his ways, that wouldn't make sense for the show. So that's actually really cool.
When he sticks to being a villain type thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Very cool. Ah, that's great. No, that's a great pick. Yeah, no, like I said, I haven't seen all of Blackadder, but I have seen parts of it. So I'll definitely have to check out the Christmas episode and have a watch. Because I love any spin on A Christmas Carol, so that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you
Very
go.
cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
I like them. We had two very different picks for our number one, but then you did have that sort of thematic sort of link to them because they both had. Well, I mean, one was literally a retelling of A Christmas Carol, but in amends, as we said, there's definitely a feel of that in the story. So it's almost like the Buffy version of that. So I like that as well. So yeah, there you have it. Couple of crossovers, which was nice, but I think we've given some good diverse picks as well. So some good ideas for people out there. So once again, let us know your thoughts on our picks, but also what would your favourite Christmas episodes of TV be? Let us know in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always, and look out for more Christmas content throughout the month from both of us, but also me, more reviews, more live streams throughout the month. Obviously, this is a special list. Look out for our Christmas film video as well. And yeah, just general stuff over the next month. So if you want to promote your channel, Rachel.
Guys, you can follow me, Rachel Macdonald, video essays on various movies and TV shows. My Tumblr is also linked through my bio on YouTube, and Keith usually puts a link in the description. So come and follow me everywhere.
Thanks, guys. And I'm not sure if this will be the last thing you see from us before Christmas, but just if it is, then we wish you a very Merry Christmas and have a great festive season. And we'll obviously see you for more fun and antics, more old couple bickering in the new year. Like, we'll be back stronger than ever in 2023. You can mark that down as a promise. But Merry Christmas, everyone.
Happy holidays.
You filthy animals. See you later.